On this episode, 5 ways to mix up your mindful edging practice.
This is the Holistic Alpha Male Optimization Podcast, where we help you unleash your true power as a man.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Steven Mathis. Thank you for listening. Let's talk about our edging practice and some ways that we can mix it up. Now, to clarify, when I talk about our edging practice, what do I mean? I know that that does not actually apply currently to all of you, but I know for a lot of you, it does. When I talk about edging, what I'm talking about is mindful edging, sacred edging, in fact. So the foundation of that, the structure is, number one, we don't have any kind of screens involved. And as much as possible, we're bringing our awareness to within ourselves. It is a mindful practice. And of course, the other key part of that is that we're not ejaculating most, if not all of the time, thus the term edging. Now, when we shift those two things, when we get rid of the screens and when we get rid of the energy drain of the ejaculation, we find ourselves in a practice that becomes incredibly powerful as a tool to explore our inner world, to connect with our inner world, to increase our energy, to transmute energy into creative ideas and many other things. It is an incredibly powerful tool, but it does require approaching it a different way. We know very well, because I've been there, and I know that for the vast majority of you've been in the other place, which is a form of masturbation that is not doing those things. It's not lifting you up. In fact, it's dragging you down in a lot of different ways. My guess is you have felt that. When we get rid of the porn, we get rid of the screens, we make it a mindful practice, we start to blend and blur the lines between meditation and masturbation. We eliminate the ejaculation at the end, and now we're building that energy and accessing it in beautiful, powerful ways. That's what I talk about when I talk about edging. Let's talk about some ways that we can mix it up. It is very important to mix it up. Here's why. Two big reasons. One is it can dramatically shift the experience for you in the moment. So the amount of control that you have and how you're able to tap into that energy and what it feels like and all of the different layers and nuances of the experience will be shifted when you start to mix it up. The other reason to mix it up is that when you mix it up more, it helps your edging practice translate more readily into having better sex with your partner. And I know that that is very important for a lot of you guys, maybe currently in a relationship that you're in. If not, then likely it's something you've thought about in a future relationship. And I can tell you that one of the most important things you can do to improve the sex that you have with a partner is to mix up your masturbation practices, because most guys are very, very habitual. Many guys, in fact, go decades without really ever mixing it up at all. And in fact, the very limited ways that a lot of guys are masturbating actually do not translate well to having sex. Thus, the reason that a lot of guys have problems with premature ejaculation, have problems with not having the kind of erection that they want to have when they're with their partner. So when we mix it up in our masturbation practice, we become more dynamic, we become more versatile in our sexuality. That helps us when we're with a partner. Let's talk about 5 ways you can mix it up. The first one is how you are stroking, how you are stimulating yourself. The vast majority of guys, again, are in a very kind of typical, what I would call like an underhand stroke, where that side of your hand is against your body. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Often it's the same speed. Often it's very, very fast. Let's mix up how you're stimulating, how you're stroking. That can really, really change things. So you can switch from an underhand to an overhand. That will shift things quite a bit. Change up the speed, change up how intense you're going in terms of soften it up a little bit. I think that's one of the best things that a lot of you guys can do, is actually soften it up. A lot of guys in their masturbation practices get very, very like aggressive and firm. And again, that leads to actually the opposite of what we want to have happen when it comes to having sex with a partner, or having sex with a partner. And that is that it actually makes it worse, because we're not able to stimulate in the same way with a partner as that kind of real specific, hard, fast kind of stimulation that a lot of guys are used to. So because they're not getting the kind of stimulation that they're used to from years or decades of masturbating in that way. It's not as stimulating, can lead to erection problems, not being able to get as aroused as you would like, all of those things. So switch up how you are stroking and stimulating yourself. Another thing to try is getting out of the idea of stroking per se and just touch. One of the things that I touched on an episode a while back, 10 or 15 episodes ago, is a technique called thumb circles, where basically take your fingers, drop them in kind of from the tip, from the top, and you make circles with your thumb on the top of the shaft, just below the head, on the top of the shaft, just below the head, kind of circle-ish kind of motions with your thumb right there. That can be a very interesting and dynamic way that allows a lot of guys to play with that edge a little bit more and have a little more control at higher arousal levels. So that's another thing you can try. Of course, those are only a few of the very many things that you can try. That is the first way to mix it up, is stimulate, stroke in different ways. The second way to mix it up is where, the environment that you are edging in. This can be a big one. A lot of guys are used to kind of doing this in secret. For a lot of guys, they're like in the bathroom, they're supposedly in the shower, they're doing it in some sort of secret kind of environment. One of the first things with environment and mixing it up is mix it up into an environment that, number one, you're comfortable in. That might require a conversation if you're in a relationship. And also mix it up in terms of move it into an environment that is one that you have sex in. If you're in a relationship and you're having sex in the bedroom and the only time you're ever masturbating is in the shower in secret, it will be very beneficial for you to actually shift your practice into the bedroom. Our mind and our body are programmed and wired very powerfully by our physical surroundings. So switching up your environment. Some other aspects of the environment, lighting is a very good thing to play around with. Again, this can affect our mental state. It can affect your nervous system. Are you able to calm down? Are you able to get into kind of a meditative state? If you're able to edge outside in the sun, it's an incredibly beautiful thing. For a lot of you guys, I know not everyone, for a lot of you guys, you may be able to find a private way to do that. Of course, do find a private way if you're going to do that, but a little corner of the yard at a certain time of day, sitting on the floor as the sun shines in through a screenless window at a certain time of day, you may be able to find ways to do that. If you can do it in the sun, that's a beautiful thing. But in general, mixing up your environment, that is the second thing to mix up that will really expand your practice. It does a lot of cool things. In fact, you'd be amazed at how much it can shift what you're feeling and the mode that your mind and your emotions get into when you switch up the environment that you're in. Let's talk a little bit more about environment. The third thing to mix up is sound. Sound is something that for the vast majority of guys throughout the entirety of their masturbation history throughout their life have neither listened to sounds nor made sounds as part of their practice, other than maybe listening to porn when porn was a thing. And hopefully that's a was. If it's not a was in your life, if it is a current thing, work on getting rid of that. I know that you may already be working on that. If you are, keep stepping. Totally changes things. But once guys get rid of that, for the most part, a lot of guys, based on all my conversations, are not having any sort of sound. They're not really making sounds like they would in sex. They're not having any kind of sound. I would suggest you mix it up with those as well. On the listening side of sounds, I would suggest you try solfeggio frequencies. You can learn a lot more about that. In fact, I have a previous episode that goes into that a lot more, a couple previous episodes that touch on that. But solfeggio frequencies are particular frequencies that align with our body in a certain way. Just like if you play a certain frequency, you can shatter glass. If you play a certain frequency, sand on a table will align itself in a certain way. Frequencies are very, very powerful. They affect us physiologically. Solfeggio frequencies are some of those frequencies. I would suggest you try 528 hertz solfeggio frequencies. I'll put a link to a playlist that I really like. It's right here on Spotify. If you're listening, watching on Spotify, it'd be super easy. Check out that album on Spotify. The other aspect of sound is making sound. Now, I know for a lot of you guys, there's going to be a little bit of a hump to get over to even try this. You're going to feel maybe some shame, some inhibition around this, but sounds are very powerful. There are many studies that show the physiological impact that sounds can have on our body. For example, grunting or yelling makes us stronger. So if we know, based on the studies, that grunting or yelling makes us stronger, we know that it increases our energy. So what do you think might happen if you grunt at some point or many points during your edging practice? Do you think it might help you tap into a little bit stronger energy? It very well might. Another form of sound that is really awesome is humming. Humming, among other things, activates our vagus nerve. Our vagus nerve is part of our autonomic nervous system, this kind of automatic part of our nervous system. In fact, it might be the most important part of it. And when we trigger or stimulate our vagus nerve, it is a very good thing for our health and for our body. One of the best ways that you can stimulate the vagus nerve is by humming. Again, look this up if you would like to. Plenty of information out there on the interwebs about humming. Again, I have a previous episode actually that talks about that as well, on one of the ones where I talked about sound. But making sound, whether it's humming, grunting, moaning, whatever it is, will help you tap into more energy. It will help you connect with that energy. One of the things that I really like about any time we make sound, whether you're edging, you're training, you're doing whatever, sound is one of the things that allows us to root ourselves in our body. It gives us a target for our awareness to come back to our body, right? When you, for example, if you're humming, there's this thing happening in your body that you can use as an anchor to bring your awareness to. You may be familiar with Om chanting, A-U-M. It's actually more like Aum, right? But that kind of chanting, one of the reasons that is often used as part of meditation, as a meditation on its own, is because it gives us an anchor and it brings our mind in a connection with our body and with the physical presence of us in a very powerful way. So listening to sounds, playing sounds, another very powerful way to mix it up. Let's talk about the fourth way to mix it up, and that is the position that you are in. The position you're in can very much affect how sensitive you are, meaning how sensitive is that trigger. When you get close to that edge, how much can you control it? And how quickly do you climb towards that edge? How much can you actually control your arousal at a 5 or 6 or 7? Can you keep it at a 7, even though you continue to stimulate? All of those things can be very much affected by the position of your body. Again, most guys, I think, don't think about this. They're not really trying different ways. They get in one habitual way. So if you are used to laying down, for example, try standing up, try sitting down. However it is, mix it up. My two ways that I personally find most beneficial, and you choose your path and you find what works best for you. Two ways that I find most beneficial are sitting down in a little bit of a reclined position and standing. I'm not personally a huge fan of laying down, although some guys absolutely are. When I'm in a seated position, a bit of a reclined seated position, that's where I can get the most meditative. So really diving deep in my inner world comes more from that position. Standing, on the other hand, it's more powerful. There's more force there, which also means it can be a little bit harder to control. But that also means that there's more energy there to work with and play with. So again, the key is mix it up, right? You will find that your mileage may vary. So the first 4 ways to mix it up: how you're stroking, how you're stimulating, the environment, sounds, and the position that you're in. Let's talk about the last one, the 5th way to mix it up that I would really suggest trying, and that is the time of day. Again, you may think that this wouldn't make a huge difference. It actually can. For a lot of guys, they find that it is much better to have their practice earlier in the day, and especially in the morning. There's a couple of reasons for that. Our testosterone is higher in the morning, so some guys find their erections are better. One of the things that is very important when we talk about a mindful edging practice is that in the morning, our mind is more clear. When you've gone through your whole day, you've gone to work, you've come home, you've been with the kids, you've been with your girlfriend, you've gotten a workout in, you've done all these things. It's 9, 10 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. Among other things, your mind has had so much going through it throughout the day that it may be harder, potentially quite a bit harder, to actually focus, to be present, to be with each moment as it happens. That's going to mean you won't have the same control, you won't have the same experience overall. Whereas if you do it in the morning, you may find that your mind is much more clear, you're more able to focus. Now, it doesn't mean that the morning is the right time. My suggestion is mix it up and try it. Now, there can be some benefits to doing it later at night. You may have heard that some creatives sometimes talk about some of their best work coming late at night, because when our mind is tired in certain ways, for some people, that can allow them to actually focus better when it comes to sort of creative stuff, or maybe even in more of this meditative kind of aspect, because their thinking mind is tired from thinking all day. And so it actually eases off, kind of gets out of the way a little bit more. So play with this, experiment with the time. And of course, it's not one or the other. One of the times that a lot of guys will have their edging practice is pre-workout, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 7 minutes. I will often, if that's the only amount of time that I have in the middle of the day, depending on what's happening, and if I feel like that is going to add value to my day, I will set a 7-minute timer and I'll have a 7-minute edging session. So experiment with what time that you're doing it. Let's recap again the 5 ways to mix up your mindful edging practice: how you're stimulating, how you're stroking, the environment that you're in, listening to or making sounds. Again, I'll put a playlist that you can check out on Spotify down below. The position that you're edging in, and the time of day that you're edging. All of these things are all factors that will affect the experience. So as you experiment with these, you're going to be able to dial in to an experience that works best for you. And that may not always look the same, of course, but you're going to start to get a feel for how some of these things impact you. And your edging practice will become more beautiful, more powerful, more pleasurable, more effective if you're sort of trying to get something out of it. That's the last thing I'll leave you with, is that when it comes to our mindful edging practice, there are 2 aspects. The reality is there is an aspect of often wanting to get something out of it, meaning you're wanting to increase the size of your penis, which, by the way, you can do. You're wanting to have better sex, which of course most guys want to. Or the other aspect is being present in the moment and just being with each moment as it happens. And it's not actually an or, it's an and, because what I would suggest is that you do take time to set intentions long term in terms of thinking about why are you engaging in your edging practice? What are the things that you want to play out over the coming weeks and months in terms of translating it into sex, translating it into creative ideas, into physical energy, into physical changes in your body? All of those things. Step up to the 30,000 foot view and think about those things and set an intention. But then when you're in the moment, be in the moment. Don't be tempted when you're actually edging to be thinking about some future thing, to be thinking about how it's going to lead to this or lead to that. Just be with the moment. It'll be a much better experience. And if you do not have an edging practice yet, or maybe you've dipped your toe in these waters a little bit, I suggest that you continue experimenting, because I can promise you, I have spoken with literally thousands of guys at this point who have started an edging practice and had it turn into something that tremendously benefits them, tremendously lifts up their life, energizes them, grounds them, helps them heal and work through internal stuff. It can become so much more when we shift how we're going about it. As always, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Have an amazing rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.